once made a great discovery. I could wander the streets of Cape Town while I was sitting at home in my living room here in DC, thanks to Google Maps Street View. In 2011, I had just come back from my Fulbright year in South Africa. I had led a creative writing club for teenage girls there in Cape Town, and I was writing a book about them now, about our time together and their lives growing up as the first post-apartheid generation. South Africans call them the born frees. My head was in that foggy space of reentry after you've come home from an amazing journey and you're back in your everyday life and you wonder, did that really happen? I knew that it had because I had a laptop filled with photographs and a suitcase full of notebooks where I tried to take down every detail I could, every view I could see. But inevitably, there's always views that you miss. One of the things that excited me about Google Maps Street View was I could recreate my days in Cape Town. I looked up Pinelands, the suburb where I lived, and I went along its leafy, quiet back streets where I learned to drive stick shift on the left-hand side of the road. I went up into Rondebosch, up Belmont toward the University of Cape Town, which is situated up against Table Mountain in this incredibly beautiful view. And all these places were really well marked on the map. As you can see here, highlighted, all the blue, those are the streets that are photographed. But the place I wanted to see most was a place called Guguletu. That's where the writing club took place and where the girls lived. Googs, as locals call it, it's a township outside Cape Town. It's a place where during apartheid, black South Africans were forcibly removed and forced to live there. As it was back then, it's a place of poverty, but it's also a place of great pride for the people who live there. In fact, the name itself, Guguletu, means our pride in Xhosa. That's the only click I can do in Xhosa. And when I was looking up Guguletu, one of the things I had in mind most of all was one of the writers. Her name's Anna Swena. She was actually one of the first girls that I met when I got to Cape Town. She asked me what I was there to do, what I had come to her country for. And so I told her, I said, I'm leading this writing club and I hope you'll join us. And she stood up real tall as she could, which was maybe 5 feet. And she said, I'll be there, I'm a poet. I thought, wow, you can just announce this without any hesitation or doubt. And she was 18. I was 40 and I was having trouble calling myself a writer. I got to know Anna Swena really well during our time together in the writing club, but in many ways outside of it, too. I went with her to the AIDS clinic to pick up her antiretroviral medications. We shared a lot of chicken sandwich wraps and fries at KFC in Googs. From our first meal we shared together, she used to tease me like a younger sister would. And then I would drive her home afterwards to the shack where she lived with her aunt and cousins because Anna Swena's mom had died when she was 10. So when I was looking on Google Maps, what I wanted to do in particular was recreate Guguletu, to look up the places there, and especially Anna Swena Street, because I couldn't remember if you could see Table Mountain from her streets. And so when I went to Guguletu, I found blank space. And I looked at it and I thought, that can't be right. The only street that was photographed is the main drag that runs down through it, NY1. NY stands for Native Yards. It was named this during apartheid as the place where black South Africans were forced to live. It's only recently been renamed Steve Biko Drive in honor of the South African anti-apartheid activist who was killed by police. Looking around at this too, you can see there's other townships nearby. There's Nyanga and Crossroads and Khayelitsha, and all those places were left unhighlighted as well. And looking at this, I thought, if you don't know Cape Town and you come across this, you'd think that there was nothing or no one there. But there was. I knew that. I had been to this place. I'd been in these townships, and I knew that they overflow with life and energy and sound and music. When I think of Guguletu, I can hear the children in their school uniforms running down the street, calling out to their friends. I know on a warm day, Guguletu always smells like grilled meat because everyone's out having a braai, which is a beloved South African barbecue. I can almost feel the sand and the dust that swirls up in those fierce Cape Town winds and sticks to everything, including you. But you wouldn't know all of that from these places here. And so I began to wonder, when we're faced with blank spaces, how often do we ask what we're missing? What views haven't been shown? What voices go unheard? How often does our curiosity fail us? I went into Guguletu because I wanted to form this creative writing club. I wanted to help girls find their voices, and claim themselves as writers long before I could do that. Some of the girls, like Anna Swaina, had no problem speaking out from the very beginning. Other girls, like I think of one named Tombi, she hated the sound of her own voice, hated to talk. But as we got to know one another, as we exchanged our stories, these girls, to a girl, found out that she had a lot to say. And all I had to do was go in and give them the writing prompts and say, just tell me what you think. Curiosity, that's all it took. So when I came time to write my own book, I couldn't rely on Guguletu. Instead, I went back to my photographs that I had taken of Googs and remembered the places and the people that I got to meet there. When we miss out on the blank spaces, we don't know what we're missing, and we don't know what else is out there, and the things that we might find can surprise us. A lot's been said this year about the bubbles that we all live in here in this country: political, geographic, economic, racial. Curiosity can pop those bubbles. But first we have to hone our curiosity. We have to reach in and ask the stories and find out where the blank spaces are and what's missing. The Nigerian writer Ben Okri said, "Stories can conquer fear, you know. They can make the heart bigger." Anna Swaina overflowed with stories. This girl was a walking monologue. We reached a point where I didn't even have to ask her questions. She just talked. She had things to say, and she had someone to listen to her, and that was all it took. She told me that her mother had been a famous singer there in South Africa, and she was. I Googled her. Her name was Annalene Malebo. She was the lead singer of an all-girl band called Joy. Basically, she was the Diana Ross of South Africa. Joy was the first black pop band to have a #1 hit on the all-white charts in 1980. Later on, Annalene Malebo became the first South African celebrity to publicly announce that she was HIV positive. In 2002, when she died, Nelson Mandela released a statement comforting her children and calling for antiretrovirals to be made available and affordable so that fewer children were orphaned. Annalene had wanted to keep the money that she had saved for her children in the event of her death. She didn't want to spend it on the expensive medications, so by the time she started on them, it was too late. I learned some of the ways that her death affected Anna Swaina, her daughter. After her mom died, she was moved around from place to place, family, friends, house to shack, township to township. I learned that this instability contributed to her struggles in school. And now when I met her, she was 18 and she was 3 years behind, trying to re-enter grade 9. But I learned other things about her too. I learned that she will sing along to any song that comes on the radio, whether she knows it or not. I learned that she loves avocados. And her laugh, which was really more of a snicker, always reminded me of Ernie's on Sesame Street. I always got the feeling when I listened to her that it had been a long time since anyone had shown curiosity about Anicetua's life. When we don't ask the stories, ask the questions to get at the stories that are missing, one of the most important things we miss out on, I think, are the places where our stories intersect. When I first met her, Anicetua told me early on that she herself was infected with HIV when she was raped by her uncle when she was 8. About a year after that conversation, she told me, when the subject came up again, she said an aunt had told her that the abuse was her own fault. I remember this day. It was one of my last days living in South Africa before I was coming back to DC, and it was a perfect December summer day, and we were driving along out the coast toward the Cape of Good Hope. And she told me this, and this comment from her aunt so outraged me that I almost couldn't see clearly to drive the car. And then I did something that I didn't expect I would do. I told Anicetua that my own uncle had molested me when I was 8. I told her that my parents told me it wasn't my fault, but we never could talk about it. So I had spent years of my life thinking that it was. And I really didn't want her to think that about herself. But Anicetua didn't. She said, "Sure, I know I'm not to blame." And all I could do was laugh at the sheer moxie of this girl. Stories do conquer fear. They do make the heart bigger, and I believe they make the world smaller and closer. Anicetua told me her story, and I told her mine, and our stories intersect with millions of others, because worldwide, 1 in 5 women reports she was sexually abused as a child, and many more never report it. Statistically, that has to include women listening to this talk. This girl from Guguletu, she was a poet long before I ever went into her community to lead a writing club. She taught me how to tell my own story and how to be brave enough to do it. So Google Maps couldn't show me a picture from Anicetua's street. But on a visit back there in 2014, I took a better one of my own. I want to leave you with a challenge. Seek out the places on the maps that are left blank. Look for the empty spaces and the voices that aren't heard from, and ask why. You don't even have to go halfway around the world to do this. You can do it in your own country, your community, your family, your bubble. You can do it in your own life, even with the stories that you thought you could never tell. Because I believe that the intersection of all of our stories forms one curious, beautiful picture. Thank you.